The water is rising. There's no more compromising.
The Prime Minister arriving in flood-ravaged Lismore, driven round the back, avoiding local protesters. Usually, we'd show you vision of the Prime Minister touring the flood crisis, but the media wasn't invited to the PM's planned morning visits to flood-affected farms and homes, and the official photographer apparently didn't take any photos. Scenes like this, perhaps best avoided. More than 2 hours late to his press conference, when he did surface, the PM confirmed his intention to declare the crisis a national emergency.
To ensure all our emergency powers are available and that we cut through any red tape that might be faced.
Signing off on tens of millions of dollars in further funding.
What has been seen here as I toured around the town centre today and many other areas was nothing more than heartbreaking. You have to see it, you have to smell it, you have to feel it.
The $1,000 disaster payments for affected locals to continue for another 2 weeks in Richmond Valley, Lismore and Clarence Valley.
I know people in the Northern Rivers are looking at their future today and wondering whether there'll be one. What I want to tell them, there is a future for you.
$1,000 disaster recovery payments is not going to make a dent in the people who have lost their entire businesses and their entire homes.
Your tour of the farm this morning, why was the media banned?
Out of respect for the privacy of those I was speaking with.
But 1 week on since the Lismore floods began...
Where were you? Where were you?
It's 10 days too late, to be honest.
Residents are increasingly fed up.
We've got nothing now. I've lost everything. What are you going to do for me?
I was rescued by a person from Ballina. There was no SES people to be seen.
Reporters took the community's concerns directly to the PM.
Who do those people blame?
What I'm going to do is thank those. Everyone has a role to play.
Do you now consider climate disasters a national security issue?
Well, I think that I've said as much in the past. I mean, we are dealing with a different climate to the one we were dealing with before. I think that's just an obvious fact. And Australia is getting hard to live in because of these disasters.
If this doesn't show that the climate is changing, nothing will.
We need help. We need help. We need help.
It will always be a joint response from community, from governments and other agencies to ensure Australians get through.
Australians wouldn't get through.
Let's do this.
Well, Kate is a Lismore local who we just saw there. She was at the protest today and joins us now. Kate, you were hoping to share your story with the PM today but were unable to. Do you want to share it now?
Sure. My story is one that is shared with many. We were given little to no warning that this flood was coming in the extremity that it came. We were expecting something around the 2017 flood, but it quickly developed into something that was way more catastrophic. And then, I found myself in a position where I was trapped in my home, in the roof of my home. We were trying to get outside help to come and collect us and save us from the roof, not knowing how high the water was going to rise, without being able to reach SES or 000. And like myself and many others, we were actually rescued by civilians who came in from Ballina and surrounding areas. So we wanted to speak to the PM and talk to him about our experience, and we feel completely abandoned. We feel like there is no help from the people that we have elected, some of us elected, and we just feel forgotten, and we just feel like we've been swept under the carpet.
What lengths did you go to try and get the PM's ear today?
We were hoping just to talk to him and to see, that he could actually see the distress and the carnage and the trauma that we've all endured here, that hopefully he would have some sort of better response than giving us $1,000 that we can't spend because there's no town. We had decided to try and find him in our neighbourhood, and he went at a different time that was not reported. So then we went up to Lismore City Council, to council chambers, to try and address him there. And he snuck in the back door, and he did not come out to face the Lismore locals. And we were waiting there for over 2.5 hours. And we are just so disappointed that he could not even face us.
Kate, I know an area that you are interested in on this issue is the broader issue of climate change. And I was really struck by a quote from the Prime Minister that we just heard in that package there, where he said, I think it's just an obvious fact that Australia is getting hard to live in. Floored me to hear that from you. What do you make of that?
I think it's another blanket statement used to deflect his inaction. Yeah, it is getting harder, but we have a choice. And if we're not going to collectively respond on a global cooperative effort, if we're not going to keep prioritising, coal mining and things that we know destroy our environment and cause climate change, like this is climate change. 90% of the people I know, their lives are ruined. It's just not good enough.
Well, Kate, thank you for all that you do. Thinking of you all there, and we hope the days and weeks get a little bit better than they are now. And we really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for getting our stories out there. We really appreciate it.
So there's been a lot of conversation around why the PM didn't declare the national emergency earlier. There were reports that the Premier's had to ask the PM to declare it. So if they haven't asked, he hasn't declared it. And apparently we're not 100% sure how this works, but under the National Emergency Declaration Bill, states don't actually need to ask for declaration of the emergency, but the PM needs to consult them if he intends to make one, which I think is what's happening at the moment, some of those conversations. But the question remains, why didn't those conversations happen a week ago? Why the delay?
Yes, and so I can see that you could criticise Scott Morrison for that, and that might be fair enough. But it would also seem that you could criticise the premiers for that, couldn't you? Because they don't have to be passive in it. They could. And so Dominic Perrottet is interesting because yesterday he said that the advice to him was that the declaration was unnecessary and the coordination between state and Commonwealth agencies had the capacity to deal with the situation. I don't know what that advice was.
Is that potentially because that's about funding, and at that point in time what they really needed was people in there,
boots on the
ground, rescuing people, and I think that's what has been most painful for people. Forget about the whole future that they need to think about, how am I going to rebuild my life? The idea that they had to rely on people out of the goodness of their hearts coming from a different neighbourhood in a tinny to come and see if they were okay. I think that's really left people heartbroken and disappointed.
Yeah, and I think it's a real problem because everyone, because of their political opinions, has different expectations of what government's meant to do. But I think the one thing everyone agrees on is that it's meant to get you out of a jam, right?
Yes.
Crisis and crisis management is like the very last thing that's left that everyone can agree government's meant to do.
And why, after all these crises that we've had, has no one come up with a coordinated response?
Yes, and this new declaration, emergency declaration, is from those Black Summer bushfires. So it's a new mechanism and maybe that's part of it. But it's not just this, it's the experience of COVID. This is where I think things like vaccine rollout come into play.
They just need to be able to mobilise quicker. This is where bureaucracy becomes very frustrating for people who are sitting there watching their houses fill up with water.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't want this to take 9 conversations for you to do this the proper legal way. I want you to turn the hell up and help me out now.
And the irony is the emergency declaration is meant to get rid of the bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's just...
But if that comes late, then where are we? Yeah.
So hard.